It is 9 p.m. This is live from Paris with me, Tom Burgess-Watson. These are our top stories. As France winds down military operations in the Sahel region, the process of handing over control of their base in Kidal to UN and Malian forces is underway. A starting point, but far short of what's needed, so says the pro-British Democratic Unionist Party with regards to EU concessions aimed at easing the Northern Ireland Protocol. And the Russian President Vladimir Putin rejects claims that Moscow is intentionally holding up gas reserves and deliveries, causing a spike in energy prices in the process. Welcome back. It was announced today that a French soldier has died in Mali. In a statement, the Armed Forces Minister Florence Parly said that the serviceman had died as the result of an accident whilst carrying out maintenance on a military vehicle. The army said it's still investigating the precise causes of that accident. Well, the soldier, who was a mechanic, was 29 years old. Well, more than 50 French soldiers have now died in Mali since Paris deployed a counter-terrorism force to the country in 2013. But France is gradually winding down its operations in the Sahel region and handing control to forces from the UN and the Malian army. France 24's Andrew Hillier has the latest.
A shake-up of France's military presence in Mali. Paris says the process of handing over control of its base in Kidal has begun. Soldiers from the UN's mission in Mali and the Malian army itself will take over the base in the coming days. The UN's MINUSMA force in Kidal is made up of 1,300 soldiers from Guinea and Chad. Another 400 soldiers from the Malian army will also maintain a presence at the military base. Kidal is one of 3 bases the French army maintains in the northern reaches of the country. The military is also planning to leave the other 2 in Timbuktu and Tessalit. Announced in June, the shake-up is part of France's blueprint to gradually start drawing down Operation Barkhane, its anti-terror mission in the Sahel. As part of that plan, the mission's French contingent will be reduced from more than 5,000 soldiers today to less than 3,000 by 2023. The move comes amid worsening tensions between both France and Mali. Back in September, Mali's transitional prime minister accused Paris of abandoning the country. That sparked a furious response in France, with Emmanuel Macron accusing Mali's military government of having no legitimacy. Mali has also stepped up its military cooperation with Russia, leaving Paris worried that Moscow might be trying to fill the vacuum left by French troops.
In other news, EU officials travelled to London today to present a package of measures aimed at easing the transit of goods from the British mainland to Northern Ireland, which remains part of the UK, but which has remained in the EU's single market for goods. Well, the UK had said that the post-Brexit arrangement known as the Northern Ireland Protocol was unworkable and that it needed a massive overhaul, adding that the protocol threatened the peace process in Northern Ireland. Well, the EU says its latest offer to the UK is designed to ease customs controls and it will lead to a significant reduction in paperwork. Well, here's the European Commission Vice President Maros Sefcovic speaking earlier.
We are proposing an alternative model for implementation of the protocol. On the one hand, the flow of goods between Great Britain and Northern Ireland will be facilitated for goods that are to stay in Northern Ireland. On the other, robust safeguards and monitoring mechanisms should be put in place to make sure that they stay in Northern Ireland.
That is the European Commission Vice President speaking there. Well, for more analysis, we can speak now to Mary Daly, who is an Emeritus Professor of History at University College Dublin. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Professor Daly. The EU has put forward measures aimed at reducing paperwork, it says, for moving goods from the mainland to Northern Ireland and cut checks on food imports by 80%. I mean, put this into perspective for us. These are concepts difficult for a lot of people to imagine. How much of a concession is this?
I think this is probably a very significant concession. Basically, Britain left the EU and the single market. Northern Ireland remains in the single market. Northern Ireland is rather like Norway. I think that's the simplest way to put it. It has access to the single market. Goods from Northern Ireland can travel freely into any part of the EU. They can cross into Ireland without any restrictions. They can go into France. They have free movement. And that is a major concession. They have a level of access to the EU that the rest of Britain doesn't have, the rest of the UK doesn't have. And I suspect if Scotland had been given that concession, they would regard it as an absolute bonanza and be cheering about it consistently and maximising its potential. Because I do think it has significant potential for the Northern Ireland economy. It gives it a great boost if used intelligently.
I mean, it sounds, listening to the DUP, that perhaps it's not quite the concession that many in the UK might have hoped for. Nevertheless, I mean, what could they be hoping for more than that, do you think?
I think basically you have to distinguish between the trade, commerce aspects of this and the politics. I think the deal, if you listen to any of the trade organisations, the business people this evening in Northern Ireland, they regard this as absolutely superb. And it does resolve one of the issues that I think was a genuinely valid one, controls over medicines coming in, because Northern Ireland is part of the National Health Service. But this is all about politics, basically. The DUP supported Brexit very strongly. Northern Ireland majority voted in favour of Remain, but the vote was very correlated with support for the Good Friday Agreement. In other words, the really dogmatic unionist areas voted for Brexit, though I think at that stage nobody could see that Brexit was in their economic or indeed their political interests. And then for a period there, after a disastrous election, when Theresa May was Prime Minister, the Northern Ireland DUP held the balance of power in Westminster. And it is thanks to Northern Ireland, and it is thanks to Northern Ireland DUP MPs that Britain got the really hard Brexit that they secured. The Theresa May deal would have been softer, would have avoided a lot of these problems, but the DUP voted for politics, for unionism, for sovereignty, whatever that means, in favour of a very hard Brexit. And then the Irish Prime Minister, the Irish Taoiseach at the time, Leo Varadkar, and Boris Johnson came up with this concession agreement. And the protocol emerged out of it, out of the generosity and I think also the creativity of the EU and a lot of those involved. But I don't think MD in Northern Ireland looked much into the details. There was very little planning about it. I mean, basically, trade between Britain and Ireland is affected by similar regulations. There haven't been major disruptions because the Irish economy, Irish business was looking, and the Irish government was looking for a long time at the implications of Brexit and what it would mean for trading relationships, and there've been no real crises. So, I mean, the Northern Ireland thing, I think, it remains highly political. The DUP has had a calamitous year. They no longer have the balance of power in Westminster. They're heading into an election. Latest opinion polls suggest they're fourth in preference, and there is the nightmare of a Sinn Féin First Minister maybe in 2022. And they are effectively resting on trying to rally the unionist heartland, and the protocol has become a weapon of choice in this rallying cry. So a lot of this is political, and I think basically there is a divide between business and the DUP. And the question is, will the business interests, who I think are quite happy with this so far anyway, I mean, and they're aware there's further negotiations. And the point is, Commissioner Šefčovič came to Northern Ireland, listened to them. And what has been said by some of them, many of them this evening, is that they've got more than they ever anticipated.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts with us. Professor Mary Daly at University College Dublin, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. The Russian President Vladimir Putin repeated an earlier promise today that Moscow is ready to provide more natural gas to Europe if requested. Well, with a surge in prices and depleting reserves, Europe is currently facing a gas crisis, which some are blaming on Moscow, but President Putin insists he's not using gas as a weapon. France 24's James Mulholland has more.
Addressing an energy forum in Moscow, Vladimir Putin said Russia was ready to supply Europe with more gas if it asked, and dismissed claims that the Kremlin was using gas as a political weapon.
Accusations that Russia uses energy as a weapon, that's complete nonsense. It's politically motivated rubbish. If they ask us to increase deliveries, we are ready to do so.
Critics say the Kremlin is limiting supply in order to exert pressure for quick regulatory approval of the new Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline across the Baltic Sea to Germany. The pipeline would deprive Ukraine, a key EU ally, of substantial transit fees and disrupt its own gas supply. Russia's gas pipeline monopoly supplies more than a third of Europe's imports. Top European clients confirm that Moscow is meeting its contracted commitments, but prices have nonetheless already soared some 600% this year. Putin says the problems lie within the European market and that it should not try to shift the blame.
Over the past decade, step by step, systemic flaws have been laid in the European energy sector. That's what has led to a large-scale market crisis in Europe.
Putin also promised that he would put Russia on the path to becoming carbon neutral by 2060 at the latest. His pledge coincides with the warning from the International Energy Agency, which said investment in greener energy needed to be tripled in order to meet the United Nations carbon reductions targets for 2030.
Now, Russia has today reported another record for the number of daily deaths from COVID-19. There have been 984 deaths from the virus in the last 24 hours, and the number of new infections is also close to an all-time high. Well, the Kremlin says this is due to the slow uptake of vaccinations. Only 29% of Russia's 146 million people are fully vaccinated. But for the time being, the authorities say they have ruled out imposing a new nationwide lockdown. Some 600,000 people are estimated to have died from COVID-19 in Brazil. That's the second highest death toll from the virus in the whole world. And now the country is shaken by a related healthcare scandal. A group of whistleblowing doctors has come forward and accused one of Brazil's biggest private healthcare providers of testing out unproven drugs like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin on COVID patients. France 24's Andrew Hillier tells us more.
Luis Cesar Pereira blames hospital directors for his mother's death. She lost her life after taking experimental medicine for coronavirus, pushed on her by the hospital itself.
A minha mãe foi utilizada como cobaia, como nada, como teste. Minha mãe foi usada como rato com uma medicação para ver se dava para curar o Covid.
He's demanding answers from Prevent Senior, one of Brazil's biggest private healthcare providers, now at the centre of a scandal that has sparked a Senate investigation and shaken the health system to its very core. At the end of last month, a group of whistleblowing doctors handed a 10,000-page dossier over to investigators. Inside, the whistleblowers laid out a series of explosive allegations. They claimed that elderly patients had been used as human guinea pigs to test unproven drugs, like hydroxychloroquine, to treat coronavirus. They even accused the health provider of covering up coronavirus deaths to fiddle the test data. It's claimed that the drugs were encouraged by President Jair Bolsonaro himself, giving the public false hope that a miracle cure existed to justify not imposing a lockdown.
Então a Prevent Senior ela tinha segurança que ela não sofreria fiscalização do Ministério da Saúde ou de outros órgãos vinculados ao Ministério da Saúde. Inclusive foi essa segurança que fez nascer neles o interesse de iniciar um protocolo experimental.
Prevent Senior denies the claims, saying doctors had been free to prescribe the COVID kits at their own discretion. Brazil's Senate aims to publish its report in some 2 weeks' time, but some say the current scandal could just be the tip of the iceberg and that other care providers may be pushing similar practices.
Meanwhile, an environmental non-profit organisation in Austria has filed a claim and a complaint against President Jair Bolsonaro at the International Criminal Court. They're accusing the leader of facilitating and accelerating the destruction of the Brazilian Amazon with policies that encourage deforestation, land grabbing, and illegal mining. The organisation says the losses on President Bolsonaro's watch amount to a crime against humanity. Last week, the Chilean Public Prosecutor's Office opened an investigation into the sale, more than 10 years ago, of a mining company. This after the Pandora Papers suggested that President Sebastián Piñera had sold the company during his first term in office through a company owned by his children. Well, now the opposition is taking steps to impeach him. Well, President Piñera, who is one of the country's richest men, denies those claims. The police in Norway say that several people have been killed and several others injured in attacks in the town of Kongsberg, which is about 80 kilometres west of the capital, Norway. Well, it's being reported that the attacker used bow and arrows, and the police say that the suspect has been apprehended. We'll bring you more details on that just as soon as they come in to us. Commemorations have been held in the Swedish city of Malmö to celebrate the history of the local Jewish community. This is the city hosts a conference to which leading US and European officials were invited on how to step up the fight against anti-Semitism. France 24's Karis Garland tells us more.
A moment to celebrate the history of the local Jewish community, but also to commemorate the Holocaust. The Swedish Prime Minister was among local and Jewish leaders gathering at this synagogue in Malmö, highlighting the role of young people in combating anti-Semitism.
Every Swedish Jew who wears a kippah or Star of David with pride is a stance against hate.
Tuesday's event came one day before Malmö, Sweden's third largest city, kicks off an international anti-Semitism forum. The city has struggled to combat anti-Jewish sentiment in recent years, part of a country-wide trend. According to government statistics, the number of anti-Semitic attacks has jumped more than 50% in the last 3 years. It's had a distinct effect on young Jewish people.
Att folk kanske har heilat när de har sett min Davidsstjärna, eller att man har skrattat åt att jag är jude, eller en gång när en tjej sa, men är hon jude, gasa henne för fan.
Det fanns en Instagram-sida där ungdomar från min stad la upp väldigt mycket antisemitiska grejer och även direkt riktat mot mig.
The Malmö Forum will seek to identify and implement measures to fight anti-Semitism.
A US basketball team has decided to bar a player from games and practice because he's refusing to get a vaccine against COVID-19. The Brooklyn Nets said they respect Kyrie Irving's decision, but local restrictions mean that he's not allowed to play for the team. France 24's Selena Sykes tells us more.
Kyrie Irving sidelined for the foreseeable future. The Brooklyn Nets have said that the seven-time All-Star will not play for the team because he is not vaccinated against COVID-19.
We respect the fact that he has a choice and he can make his own and right to choose. They're never easy decisions, but at the end of the day, I think we're looking at putting a group of people out there that are going to be able to participate fully.
The Nets said they have no choice but to leave out their star point guard after New York introduced regulations stating all athletes playing or practicing in the city have to be vaccinated. The decision will break up the team's formidable Big Three, Irving, Kevin Durant and James Harden, which had put them among the favourites to win the NBA title this season, a move which has sparked a mixed response from fans.
Sort of like a spokesperson or a role model for people to get vaccinated, especially minorities. So I think it's really important that he's vaccinated. He shouldn't play if he's not vaccinated.
I believe that he should have the right to vaccinate, if he doesn't want to get vaccinated, not get vaccinated. But at the same time, he has a huge platform and a huge following, and it sends a wrong message to children and people who look up to him.
Irving is set to lose about $380,000 for every home game he misses. The 29-year-old can play in away games, but the Nets have ruled that out as an option. Golden State Warriors player Andrew Wiggins had also publicly refused to get vaccinated, but said he felt forced to do so after the introduction of regulations for athletes in San Francisco. Despite a few high-profile holdouts, 96% of NBA players are vaccinated, a far higher percentage than the general population in the US.
It is time now